When news breaks, we break in.
News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
KVNU News Time is 5:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Roof Rescue. A 40-year-old Providence woman has accepted a plea deal after being arrested for allegedly forging checks from her employer. As part of the agreement, Jennifer Larson refused to admit that she was guilty but will still be sentenced to the crimes in March. Larson participated in a virtual hearing in First District Court on Wednesday morning. She pleaded no contest to theft, forgery, and computer crimes, all third-degree felonies. 9 remaining charges were dropped by prosecutors. The plea means she conceded the charges alleged without admitting guilt or offering a defense. Prosecutors claim Larson stole more than $5,000 from her employer. She allegedly took multiple checks from the company and forged them to herself while managing the business payroll. It's also alleged Larson delisted company property for sale online and deleted internet accounts, causing the company's internet history to be permanently lost, causing a substantial reduction in company sales. The crimes occurred during a 10-month period in 2020. In a message to KVNU, Larson claimed she was innocent. She wrote that her former boss was emotionally and sexually abusive. He also allegedly bribed her with gifts to keep her quiet about his illegal business activities. Larson spoke only briefly during Wednesday's hearing, telling the court she was willing to accept the plea deal worked out between attorneys. She could face up to 5 years in prison when sentenced on March 9th. KVNU News Time is 5:07. KVNU weather for tonight: cloudy, snow this evening, chance of snow after midnight, accumulation 1 to 3 inches, overnight low in the lower 20s. And then tomorrow, cloudy and then clearing skies with some sunshine, mid-30s for the high. It's been to 29. It's 28 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Napa Auto Parts. Always the best prices on the best parts. Receive a $20 rebate with purchase of Napa's Legend battery. Seafoam motor treatment, just $7.99 for a 16-ounce can. At your 5 locally owned Napa Auto Parts stores from Preston to Providence.
If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, just wait until you hire an amateur.
Why the heck is the roof leaking? Larry, you said you got it fixed.
I thought it was fixed, Donna. Everything was fine until it started raining.
Larry, that's the point of fixing the roof, is so we can actually live here when it's stormy outside.
This is David with Roof Rescue. Our experienced roofing team is tried and true and will fix your roof guaranteed. Visit roofrescueusa.com to schedule your free roof inspection. Roof Rescue, providing watertight peace of mind.
KVNU News Time is 5:08. Idaho officials have sent MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell a cease and desist letter and a bill of more than $6,000 over the businessman's repeated accusations of voter fraud in the state. The Idaho Statesman reports Secretary of State Lawrence Denny and Attorney General Lawrence Wasden sent the cease and desist to Lindell on Tuesday. The letter demands Lindell remove all false statements about Idaho's elections from his website and that he stop making the false claims. Denny and Wasden also want Lindell to pay the state for the money it spent proving Lindell's allegations wrong. The Idaho Statesman reached out to Lindell by email, but he had not responded as of Wednesday evening. And the widow and 2 sisters of a U.S. Marine killed in Afghanistan are suing actor Alec Baldwin. Marine Lance Corporal Riley McCollum of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, was among 13 U.S. soldiers killed in a suicide bombing in August. His sisters and widow allege the actor exposed them to a flood of social media hatred when he claimed on Instagram that one of the sisters was an insurrectionist for attending former President Trump's Washington, D.C. rally on January 6th last year. The lawsuit says the sister Royce McCollum was not among those who stormed the U.S. Capitol. Representatives for Baldwin did not immediately return email and phone messages on Wednesday. KVNU News Time is 5:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Stay informed, stay connected. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, and online at 610kvnu.com.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes Priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
It's going to be a big year for local gardens. Anderson Seed and Garden encourages you to get your seed and plant orders in early for the growing season. Make sure you're not the one left out this year. Anderson Seed and Garden has a massive seed collection ready for you. Just go online to andersonseedandgarden.com, then scroll down to place a seed order. Or, if you prefer, their friendly and helpful staff is available to help you in person. Go see what's new at Anderson Seed and Garden. Logan.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. As his second term in the Oval Office begins, President Biden seems to be putting out fires in every direction. How can he reset his time in the White House? Also, employers are using 401ks to attract workers and retain talent. Hear how the tax advantage plans are beefing up. And managing rising food prices if your wallet's taking a beating. Friday on This Morning, America's First News. From 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM. Your station for news and talk.
Hey, this is Grace Gosted. I'm a singer-songwriter, and like many, I've been traumatized by years of bullying. You're ugly, you're stupid, you're gay, you're worthless. Bullying causes real harm and can result in severe long-term depression, anxiety, addiction, and even self-harm. I created the Black Box Project for anyone who has ever felt different for any reason. Go to theblackboxproject.org to help you take the first step to healing. You are not alone.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Hour 2 of today's show. Thursday, January 20th. Thanks again to Charlie Schill of CashValleyDaily.com joining us here in the studio in Hour 1 to talk theater, arts, entertainment, and more. Always nice to step away from the headlines of the day for a bit and talk about what we can all get out to do this weekend to have fun, decompress, and more. Day 3 of the legislative session is, well, mostly over at this point. They wrap things up a little bit early today. This is how it often goes at the first part of the session. By next week, they'll be into full legislative mode, working until at least 6 o'clock each night from 10 in the morning to 6 p.m. And then as the legislative session progresses, you'll start to see those nights go a little later till 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. And then in the final week, they'll have a few nights where they work up until midnight, including the final night where they can't work past midnight. So follow all of this at le.utah.gov. As I've mentioned before, you can track legislation there, get email reminders, even text reminders. There are a couple of Twitter accounts. UT Ledge Tracker is one Twitter account that just basically lets you know anytime anything happens, from a committee starting or announcing a meeting date and time and location to a bill advancing through the legislative process in one way or another. It's a lot. It'll fill up your Twitter feed, but it's a great way to track this. My preference, if you're interested in following along, go to le.utah.gov, find your lawmaker for your district, or all of them from here in Cache Valley, or all of northern Utah, or all of Utah if you want, and look at the legislation they're working on, which is easy to do once you find their individual pages, and then check the box to get a tracker on that. Bills you like, don't like. Contact information for your lawmakers there as well. And another useful reminder from our good friend Holly Richardson, now of UtahPolicy.com, and Holly on the Hill on Twitter. She's a longtime coverer of Utah legislature, going back to the early 2005, 2006, I think is when she started, HollyOnTheHill.com. She's been a lawmaker. She served in the House for a few years. She's someone who knows how this works, and she posts a yearly reminder during the legislative session how to influence your legislator. And some simple tips. Yelling and screaming at them and calling them names in an email or on social media is useless and a waste of your time and theirs. But a thoughtful email expressing your concerns or support for a piece of legislation does actually impact lawmakers, especially if those emails are coming en masse. So a good way to go about having some say in this legislative session. The Capitol is open to the public. There are some restrictions, masking, things like that, recommended but not required. They are searching bags this year. That's a new thing for the legislative session. And that was implemented by the Utah Highway Patrol, who oversees security during the legislative session there at the Capitol when this session started. So coming up, we'll have an update for you, a big discussion today in the Utah Senate over these competing income tax cut proposals. A fifth one was announced today, which is to take it to 4.5%. Right now it's at 4.95. We've got one proposal that it dropped to 4.90, a 0.05 reduction, about $20 a month for the average Utahn in the median income range at least. There's another proposal to drop it to 4.75 from that 4.95 where it's at now. Yet another proposal to drop it to 4.6, a proposal in the House that's not really unveiled yet, but has been acknowledged by Senate leaders, at least that they've seen it, to drop it to 4.1. I'll tell you that one's DOA, but some House representative is having delusions of grandeur, I guess, on putting his name on that one. And then another proposal discussed just today, briefly, not in great detail, that would drop it to 4.75, so somewhere in between the 4.6 and the 4.90 that were originally proposed. So we've got audio of that discussion for you, and it gives you a great idea of where lawmakers' minds are at on this, why they want to do it this year, and why there are competing visions as far as how low to go or how not low to go on this. So that's coming up in just a bit. Audio from today's Senate discussion on a proposed income tax reduction here in Utah. Some other highlights from today, at least. Some more bill filing took place. Representative, let me make sure I get this right, Representative Walt Brooks in the House, Republican in the House, filed a resolution on motorcycle traffic stops. The resolution, it's interesting. Resolutions are another waste of time, in my opinion, but lawmakers do this to sort of say the legislature has this opinion, and then that can actually be impactful. The resolution doesn't require any action. It's non-binding. It doesn't spend any money, can't spend any money, but it says, we believe this as a legislative body, if it passes, and then that will cause state agencies or other even quasi-government entities to start following suit. So this resolution that was proposed today, quote, encourages collaboration and communication between law enforcement and the motorcycle community regarding motorcycle traffic stops and urges state law enforcement officials to include procedures for motorcycle traffic stops in policies and training. There was a big discussion over this one today because people wanted to know the purpose. And one of the other items in the resolution, it states, whereas the state of Washington enacted legislation requiring training to ensure that issues related to motorcycle traffic stops were addressed in basic law enforcement training. Basically, they want to bring that to Utah. Maryland, Louisiana, Idaho have also done other things. And basically, the laws in the end, not this resolution, but the laws that came out of other states that this resolution is saying we should explore here in Utah, actually prohibit the targeting of motorcyclists in traffic stops. And I'm not sure if we have a problem with that in Utah. I haven't seen any data, and there was none supplied by Representative Brooks, the sponsor of this. But it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. And that one actually got a lot of debate today. Also, Representative Chu, another Republican in the House, filed a bill to require discussion about agricultural fences to be included in OHV and hunting education courses. This is a bill that would actually create a training program, or at least create a task force to create a training program when it comes to off-road vehicle recreation and supply that in training courses, licensing courses, hunting education courses, basically trying to address, with the increase in recreation, especially during the pandemic, increase in outdoor recreation, folks in agriculture, family farms, ranchers, and more have said they've had a real problem with trespassing, with people even cutting fences, with having to rescue people on their own land that shouldn't have been there in the first place, but then got stranded or stuck or had a breakdown. And the bill actually could make it a little more difficult for businesses that have popped up a lot more during the pandemic that are just basically renting off-road vehicles, razors basically, or side-by-sides to the inexperienced. And this aims to sort of force an education program into all of this somehow. It'll be interesting to see if that goes forward. Finally, we talked about this last week, but Representative Mike Peterson from here in Cache Valley, Utah's current 3rd district, soon to be the 2nd district due to redistricting and the number of districts changing. He received a primary challenger, by the way, former Representative Val Potter, who lost to Peterson in a Republican primary last go-round, is back in the race. He made that announcement earlier this week, made it official. And so, again, that will cover as things go on, but it'll be interesting to see if this changes the way Peterson has approached the legislative session. Last week, we talked about a podcast that Peterson did with a Southern Utah lawmaker from Blanding, basically, Representative Phil Lyman, who has been a controversial figure for a lot of different reasons, most recently sharing a video from Alex Jones, InfoWars, about the whole pandemic being a big scam, pandemic. It was created on purpose to control our brains. And anyway, weird stuff. But Lyman shared that video in an official legislative committee meeting and caught some flack for it. He and Peterson teamed up in this podcast, and last week they had a conversation about Utah's move towards digital driver's licenses, and it was suggested in that podcast, without any pushback from Peterson, that this is all a big UN plot. This is all part of the United Nations creeping into Utah, Agenda 21 and all of that. I was surprised to see him a part of that discussion and putting his name on it. Well, bad news for Representative Peterson. Senator Lincoln Fillmore's bill to allow digital driver's licenses in Utah, to take it out of a pilot program and move it. And Lincoln Fillmore is a Republican from the Utah County area in the Utah Senate. His bill to move it from a pilot program to a statewide official, it would just be a thing you can do in Utah if this bill passes, was approved unanimously today by the Senate Transportation Committee. Majority of Republicans in that committee passed the bill on to further Senate floor debate, meaning that the digital driver's license pilot program, if this passes and is signed by Governor Cox, would expand into a statewide option, allowing you to carry your driver's license as a digital file or through a state-sponsored app on your phone, instead of having to carry a physical license with you anymore. So that pilot program would expand to a statewide option for drivers out there in Utah. Along these same lines, this bill hasn't advanced, but just a reminder, there's another bill that is aiming to do the same thing with your registration, your car registration. So it'll be interesting to see if that gets any traction this year as well. So those were the most notable items that happened on Capitol Hill today, outside of what we'll get to next after the break. A big discussion over now 5 different proposals to cut Utah's income tax rate, from one proposal offering a meager 0.05% tax cut to another that would cut it by almost 8%. We'll see which one gets traction, but Utah Senate leadership had a big discussion about this today, and we've got the audio coming up right after this here on KVN News for the People.
It's the perfect time to get rid of that old wood stove or put an insert in that old fireplace, because the state of Utah's wood stove and fireplace change-out program is back. Advanced Fireplace and Stove says let the government foot the bill up to $3,800 towards your new Heat and Glow gas insert or fireplace or Vermont casting stove. Do you live in Idaho? No worries. Idaho's change-out program is in full swing. They can assist in the Idaho wood change-out too. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, 435-753-3734 or at advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
UNI Furniture is excited to be going back to the furniture market in Las Vegas. After taking the last couple of years off, the furniture market is back on, and UNI is expecting to buy lots of inventory direct from the manufacturers. So in anticipation, UNI has gotten aggressive with their in-store discounts during their January clearance. Sofas, loves, chairs, sectionals, dining room, bedroom, and mattresses are all on sale. This January clearance features discounts on all home decor and accents too. It all adds up to just another reason there's always a better buy at UNI Furniture, downtown Logan.
Technology can make our lives more fun, but when tech is used for cyberbullying, children's lives can be damaged. Peter and Amanda Como found good communication protects their kids.
I would suggest go to jw.org. The resources there are just practical.
Their 16-year-old son picked up tips to help if he was bullied.
Oh, you could use humor. You could just not listen. It'll dissolve the situation.
To find more tips and tools to protect your child from cyberbullying, look to stopbullying.gov or search bullying on jw.org.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People.
Yeah, he's
Day 2 of the legislative session today with most of the floor time and afternoon floor time, House and the Senate going to technical bills, some cleanup bills from last year and more. The Utah legislature yesterday, the Senate kicked off with a local control issue, overriding Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City's 30-day mask mandate that was approved by the county council after being recommended by Dr. Angela Dunn, now the director of the Salt Lake Health Department, former Utah state epidemiologist during the 2020 pandemic year. They are scrambling to come up with excuses why they did that. The real answer is politics. The 3 senators up for re-election this year in the Senate, Utah State Senate, are in very red Republican portions of Salt Lake County. Then it gets over to the House, and the House says, we're not going to talk about it yet. We're thinking about it. We're trying to reach consensus, and everyone's like, what gives? The rush yesterday in the Senate, now pause in the House. Well, the answer is politics again. In the House, the 4 House representatives that are up for re-election in 2022 in the House, in the Republican Majority Caucus, live in moderate Republican districts of the county. So they are, it's basically a war of whose political concerns wins. When strangely it's supposed to be about public health. But that's the nature of our legislature these days. That basically ate up all the energy yesterday. Today, they got a lot of, again, technical cleanup bills and prioritization bills done. And they began work on the base budget, which is always where they start things. But there was a very interesting discussion about something that's been talked about a lot this year, the possibility of an income tax cut. This hasn't happened for years in Utah. Most of the tax cuts that the state Senate president has patted themselves on the back for over the last few years have been smaller, targeted tax cuts. Not that they don't help the individuals that receive them, but this would be the first statewide tax cut in many, many years. And the debate is, well, it seems to be at least, I'm tea leaf reading here, but the debate to me seems to be less about whether or not it's going to happen, but more of a debate of what it's going to look like. There are 3 different proposals right now being discussed in the Utah State Senate and another 2 that are similar but a bit different in the Utah State House over a tax cut. There's, of course, the food tax repeal bill that's making its way through the House, although ironically that tax cut they don't seem as warm to. We'll see where the debate goes on that. The income tax cut, there's 3 versions that will most likely it'll come down to. One version is a very small tax cut. It would basically be about $20 for most Utahns in the median income level. And if you crunch the numbers, not a lot, basically, but $20 a month. So it's not insignificant, but it's not a lot. But it's 4.95 to 4.90%, a 0.05% income tax cut. The second proposal is to drop it down from the current 4.95% to 4.75%. And then there is a third proposal that recommends cutting the income tax from 4.95%, where it's currently at, to 4.6%. When you get into that much of a cut, you're talking about a lot more money in pocketbooks, but you're also talking about a lot less revenue for the state at a time when population is expected to double. We're facing a lot of challenges. The pandemic and last year's drought really revealed some of the underfunded for years projects here in the state of Utah when it comes to water development, water conservation. Our reservoirs a bit outdated and in needs of repair. So that's what this debate is going to come down to, the need of the state spending-wise and revenue-wise versus the desire of lawmakers to provide a significant income tax cut in a re-election year, of course. Here's a bit of how this was being discussed today during the Utah Senate media availability after it came up for a very, very, very brief debate during Senate floor time.
Senator Vickers, one of those tax bills is yours. Are you open to changing it and lowering it the rate further? We've got 3 different income tax reduction bills, and one goes to 4 and one more. Oh, great. We got 4.
Well, if you start counting House side, I think there's more than that.
So are you open to going lower, as it were?
Yeah, so when you say my bill, it's actually Senator Milner and I. We actually jointly opened that bill together, even though I know that it shows me as a sponsor, but it's really the 2 of us. And I don't want to speak for her, but our thought process was to, because we opened that early, to start a modest approach, and then it's always easier to go down than it is to go up. So.
Senator Milner?
Same thing. I think when we opened it up, we didn't know exactly what our numbers were, but felt like we wanted to indicate if things were healthy, that we should share some of that back with the taxpayers.
Well, what's a good rate for you? What do you feel like is 4.9 or 4.95 to 4.9 is one. Some go down as low as 4.6. Some are 4.75. What are you comfortable with?
Well, I'm comfortable. I mean, I think you saw that we put about 160 million back for tax cut. I'm comfortable going to that range. Beyond that, I think we need to be more cautious from my standpoint. I was around in 2000, I'm in a different role, but we had this record year in 2007, 8, and then after that, we were cutting budgets. I mean, it's like slashing budgets for 3 years, and I lived through that. And part of that was a big tax cut. I'd rather be much more measured, because if you look at the economic models, what you see is that this could be a bit of a bubble because of all the federal stimulus money. So let's be careful and thoughtful. If we can take it down some this year and provide some relief for taxpayers, that's good. But let's be measured and not have to take drastic action because we weren't measured.
Last year, we focused on 3 specific areas: Social Security, dependent exemptions, and military retirement. The thought is this year that Senator Miller and Senator Vickers have indicated their bills focus on an income tax reduction, and we did put away we did set aside the $160 million. I think that brings us down to, help me if I'm right, 4.85.
4.85.
And so that would be a 4.85, and that's probably the target right now that we have set aside the money for. So if that gives any clarity, but there's a lot of tax cut bills out there: sales tax, property tax. I mean, there's a lot going on.
I think our caucus would be open to discussion about other options too. Along with that, I think our number one priority is income tax cut, but we're open to some discussions about other things, whether it be a targeted grocery credit or earned income tax credit, something along those lines. And I know there's some other options out there as well. But so we're open to having further discussions. But our number one priority is an income tax cut, and I think Senator Milner outlined it well. That utilizing what we have set aside would take it to 4.85.
Yeah. 22 months ago, I wouldn't have believed we'd be in the position we are in today. So pretty amazing.
Senator Escamilla, how do you feel? How does your caucus feel about the tax bill?
So great, thank you. So for us, we're starting with asking to eliminate tax on food, sales tax on food. So we would love to start the conversation maybe there. Because some of us were during the times that Senator Milner explained really eloquently, we do have some concerns of just drastic changes when this money, the surplus that we're talking about we're not going to see this unprecedented due to the pandemic and the funding coming from the federal government and stimulus checks. So we're concerned of jumping into a large income tax break, but we love to start the conversation by first taking care of the sales tax and food.
Senator Escamilla highlighting there one of the challenges to all of this. As she mentioned, this is not a situation that Utah can bank on being in next year or the year after. It's likely the economy nationwide is looking good, and the unemployment being as low as it is nationwide means that higher odds that Utah's very low unemployment rate remains very low. And all of that says to the state basically, look, revenue is probably, as population grows, and if you keep managing to bring jobs in and maintain the jobs that are here, then most likely next year, the year after, maybe even the year after that, revenue looks pretty good. An unexpected recession could throw a wrench in that. And then as Senator Escamilla is pointing out, a lot of the reason Utah has so much money to work with this session is because, well, to put it bluntly, for 2 years, they've been able to fund a lot of the state's needs with federal aid money through the various rescue packages that were passed by both the Trump administration and the one from last March from the Biden administration. That's really taken the pressure off of the state budget. So an income tax cut would be an ongoing reduction in revenue is basically what Escamilla is saying there, and what Senator Vickers on the Republican side is saying as well, and they have to factor that in. How much of a reduction in revenue can the state afford and still meet the needs of the state, especially with some of the challenges we're facing? So that debate is going to be a long one. I would expect we won't hear really where this lands, I mean, possibly until the final week of the session. But it seems clear from the majority leadership that a income tax cut is something they want to get done if they can find a way to do it. So we'll keep you posted on this. If you'd like to see the 3 official proposals, as Senator Vickers mentioned at the start there are more proposals in the House, 4 that they know of, maybe 6 in the end. But the details on are only really clear on the first 3 coming from the Senate, the 4.95 to 4.90, the 4.95 to 4.75, and the third proposal, 4.95 to 4.6. That fourth proposal in the House is rumored, again, we don't know this for sure, but it's rumored to be a cut from 4.95 to 4.1. And I can tell you right now, based on the way the Senate leadership in the Republican caucus are reacted to that proposal, that one is tilting at windmills. They're not going to go that low, but they might go to 4.6. We'll see. It really depends on what they are confident revenue projections long-term look like as the federal money runs out, basically, from these rescue packages in 2022 and 2023. So that's what it'll come down to, but don't expect to hear anything firm on which option they go with until later on in the session. But that's where the discussion is right now on proposed and likely income tax cut here in Utah. That was the big discussion of today and day 2 of the legislative session, but we've got some more highlights from more bills that were made public, different ideas from different lawmakers that you can expect to be debated during this 45-day session, now 2 days down. We'll talk about those right after this. Look at the news from KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 5:38, and the news is brought to you by Northern Steel Building. A 24-year-old Logan man was sentenced to prison after previously admitting to stealing a truck, leading police officers on a chase, and then crashing the car into a townhome in Logan. Jesse Oliva asked the court for another chance while asking for forgiveness. Oliva was sentenced during a virtual hearing in First District Court Wednesday morning. He previously pleaded guilty to theft, a second-degree felony, and failing to stop at the command of law enforcement, a third-degree felony. On June 21st of last year, Oliva stole a red Dodge pickup truck from the 7-Eleven gas station near 1400 North in Maine. The victim had left the keys in the ignition of the truck and left it unlocked when they went in to make a purchase from the gas station's convenience store. They were able to identify the defendant and notify police. When officers spotted the stolen truck, Oliva refused to stop and sped off, leading to the chase. He later drove through a stop sign and later crashed into a townhouse near the intersection of 1140 North, 400 West. During Wednesday's sentencing, defense attorney Ryan Holdaway said Oliva had an abusive childhood growing up and had later gotten involved with gangs. He also described how the defendant suffered from hallucinations and had no impulse control. Judge Brian Candle agreed with Holdaway about Oliva's struggles with mental health. He reduced the defendant's theft crime to a third-degree felony and sentenced him to 0 to 5 years in prison. The judge also recommended Oliva be given credit for time served. He said he was hopeful that the defendant could change. A 37-year-old Wellsville man has been given the maximum prison sentence for stealing a truck and trying to flee law enforcement more than 2 years ago. Bo Nopens was ordered to serve 1 to 15 years, but given credit for the time already served in the Cache County Jail since being arrested November 9th, 2019. Nopens was sentenced during a virtual hearing in First District Court Wednesday morning. He previously accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to theft, a second-degree felony, and failing to stop at the command of law enforcement, a third-degree felony. Nopens was arrested after stealing a black pickup in Wellsville. And former State Representative Val Potter has announced a bid to reclaim his seat in the Utah legislature. On the same day the 64th legislative session was beginning, Potter said he was running again because he cares about Cache Valley. After serving in several local elected positions, Potter represented constituents in North Logan and surrounding areas in the State House of Representatives from 2017 to 2020. While running for a third term in the legislature, Potter lost the GOP nomination for his seat to challenger Mike Peterson in the state primary balloting on June 30th, 2020. Peterson had campaigned against the incumbent lawmaker by arguing that Potter's support for Utah's abortive 2019 tax reform initiative demonstrated a disregard for the will of the people. Peterson then defeated Democratic candidate Holly Gunther in the November 2020 general election. But Potter now says that some of his former constituents are dissatisfied with Peterson's performance as a lawmaker after only 1 year at the state capitol in Salt Lake City. Potter said he has a proven track record of listening to constituents, seeking public input, and delivering for Cache Valley. KVNU News Time is 5:42.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, and where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KVNU weather tonight, cloudy, snow this evening, then a chance of snow after midnight, accumulation 1 to 3 inches, overnight low in the lower 20s. Cloudy Friday morning and then clearing skies, high temperature in the mid-30s. Partly cloudy and around 30 degrees on Saturday. It's been to 29, it's 29 degrees right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Lendright Mortgage. They have interest rates in the ones on 8 to 15-year terms. Act now to cut years off your loan by locking a rate in the ones and twos. Call Lendright Mortgage at 801-APPROVE. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
This is Dr. Red, chiropractic physician with Red River Health and Wellness. Are you suffering with fatigue, brain fog, headaches, intestinal issues, weight gain, and you haven't been able to find any answers?
I've constantly been fighting with my weight and thyroid issues for more than 25 years, and none of the doctors in 25 years have ever been able to explain to me what Hashimoto's is, what it means to me, and how to manage it.
Red River Health and Wellness can help you.
Today, my life is like the minute I get out of bed, I hit the ground running. I'm ready to go. I want to see what today is going to bring, what adventures I'm going to have without pain and with all the energy to do everything that I want to do.
Our goal is to teach you and educate you so you know how to manage your condition a lot more effectively and you know what to do and what not to do for the rest of your life. With our satisfaction guarantee, you have nothing to lose.
Call Red River at 855-55-RIVER to schedule an in-depth consultation absolutely free. All appointments can be done remotely by FaceTime, Skype, or phone.
Ah, that's better. Trade in the stresses of building a new home for relaxation. Visionary Homes' priority is giving you a stress-free building experience. Named the best home builder in northern Utah, Visionary Homes' team will guide you seamlessly through the home building process. Call today, 435-228-4702, or visit visionaryhomes.com to learn more about upcoming communities in Nibley, Logan, and Smithfield. Visionary Homes, built for living, built for you.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. You've probably heard Bill's report during the news breaks there on numbers here in northern Utah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bill.
775 since yesterday.
That's
in Cashbox, Elder, and Rich. And
statewide, it's tens of thousands.
Yeah, it's still, what was it statewide?
It was 40,000 yesterday.
11,608 between Wednesday and today for the state.
That is, so this is obviously very elevated spread throughout the state of Utah. This is no surprise as discussion of the Omicron variant began when it was first discovered by researchers in South Africa. That was one of the first things they said is, look, this thing appears to hang in the air for about an hour. It's going to be very contagious. One virologist quoted in a New York Times article I read earlier this week said this is actually the most not the most deadly, by far not the most deadly with Omicron, but the most contagious virus that the human race has ever faced. So it's out there. Again, this is no surprise. The governor will be speaking about this tonight. It will be a part, I'm sure, of his State of the State address, and you can watch that on the governor's Facebook page. If you use Facebook, it's just search for Governor Spencer J. Cox. If you don't use Facebook, you can still get to it. It's a public page. He's a public official, and that means that he is available even if you're not logged in. So it is just Governor, G-O-V, Gov, Spencer J. Cox. Facebook.com/Gov Spencer J. Cox will take you right to his page, even if you're not a Facebook user. So I almost said Facebook loser, and I've been pretty...
Well, sometimes I've been
there.
Synonymous, yeah. Only losers go on Facebook.
That's right. We won't be bringing you the governor's State of the State address because you have the option to listen to something better, which is Al Lewis and Aggie Game Day. That's coming up at 6:05 tonight, just a few minutes after we wrap here. But the governor, if you'd like to see the governor's State of the State address, it'll be streaming live on his Facebook page. Better yet, listen to Al Lewis and Aggie Game Day and tune in tomorrow at 4 o'clock ahead of the movie show with Andy Morgan, and we'll bring some highlights. But the governor will be addressing this. The reason I bring all this up is one, to tell you about the State of the State address starting tonight at 6 on the governor's Facebook page, but also because I sort of, from a detached, removed way, which is a harder thing to do in the middle of a pandemic. That's one thing I've learned about myself. I've always been good at sort of detaching myself from a personal or emotional take on an issue and looking at it from, just a political junkies or a public policy nerd's perspective, a wonk as they call them. With the pandemic, it's a bit harder because you're talking about, risk to loved ones. Many people I know have lost someone to COVID-19, either Alpha, Delta, or actually, I do not know anyone that's lost anyone to Omicron, but it's early, and fingers crossed that what we think we know about Omicron tends to be the case, which is that it's far less deadly. But I do know a lot of people who have lost someone to Delta, the Delta variant. I know even more people who know someone or who have themselves ended up hospitalized for a long period of time because of Delta. So it's a lot harder to remove the emotion from that. But in this case, I was able to a bit. And looking at this from sort of a political junkie's perspective, it's really interesting and also something that can make you very cynical to watch what happens. The legislative session kicked off with the Utah Senate literally ramming through a bill, a resolution that was written in such a way it did not require a public hearing and did not expose itself to a potential veto by the governor. And it was a resolution that basically trampled all over Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City for their 30-day mask mandate. Despite the fact that the 30-day mask mandate went through the process the legislature themselves designed in their supposed endgame bill that kicked in July, passed during the 2021 legislative session. They went through all of those hoops laid out by lawmakers, and lawmakers still did what they did on Tuesday. Then that resolution rushed through the Senate without public debate and without being exposed to a governor's veto. That's how they wrote the resolution. It gets over to the House, which also has a Republican majority, and it looks like it's just going to die there without a vote. The House not interested. From what I'm hearing, the House is angry the Senate rushed it without a public hearing. And the House is also taking into consideration the politics of this, which I assure you the Senate was doing as well. So here's the cynical side of a lot of the public policy around COVID-19. Here in Utah, what actually happened on Tuesday is you have 3 Republican senators up for re-election in Salt Lake County, and they happen to be in some of the most conservative parts of Salt Lake County. So obviously, it's in their interest to say, I voted for this. I sponsored this. I co-sponsored this. Then you get over to the House, exact opposite situation in the majority in the House. The 4 House representatives that will be up for re-election this cycle are in very, very moderate portions of Salt Lake County. And so they're hearing from their constituents anger at the repeal of the mask mandate. Well, you have 3 senators who are hearing most likely from their constituents, or the people most likely to put them back in office at least, the base, as they call it in politics, that they're angry the mask mandate ever was a thing and should be repealed immediately. So you have these competing political interests that have nothing to do with what the experts are saying is smart public policy. It's very hard to be cynical. So that's what's behind a lot of this. And it makes me, in a way, feel for the governor and lieutenant governor. So I wanted to find something positive to point to, because I feel like the governor and the lieutenant governor have done 2 things well. They've been responsible far more than our legislative leadership has. The Senate president was likely still contagious on Tuesday without a mask, shaking hands on the Senate floor. He's completely eating it for that at this point. We made CNN, we made all of the political news websites, and the Senate president had to apologize and fumble through an explanation on this. That's just irresponsible, and also sends the wrong message that you're trying to send to the public. It's something that an elected official who's been there as long as he had probably should have thought of, but didn't for some reason. The governor and lieutenant governor, on the other hand, also conservative Republicans, so this is not a partisan thing at all. They've been very responsible in the way they've conducted themselves and the way they've talked about this. But some of the things that they've had to say are hard to express in a way. So the governor recently has faced a huge backlash for what people thought was kind of a callous and flippant press release on Tuesday, where he basically said, look, if you don't have symptoms, assume you have it and stay home for 5 days at least. That's it. And people exploded. And I get that to some extent, but they exploded. They're like, what? The governor's basically throwing in the towel. We're saying that we're not even going to attempt to use state resources to do what you should do in a pandemic, which is at least know where the outbreaks are the worst, right? And the only way you can do that is through testing and other mitigation efforts. The Utah Department of Health just hours later sent out a announcement that they're basically saying do your own contact tracing. This is something the health departments have been trying their best to do for the last 2 years, but now they're saying if you find out you've been exposed or that you've got it, take it upon yourself to protect others and let them know if you've been around them in the last few days. So it's on you. And we should all be capable of being at least that responsible and concerned about our fellow human beings, right? So nothing wrong with that, but it's still kind of a shocking message for everyone to hear. It really seems like everyone's just saying, good luck. But where I sympathize with the governor is that that's the reality. Because when it comes to testing, this is what the governor should have explained and probably would have avoided some of the flack he's gotten this week. He should have said, I'm not saying this because I'm throwing in the towel, because I'm callous and don't care, because people will still die in smaller numbers, at least, especially in contrast to the number of cases. A smaller percentage of those who contract it are going to die, but there will still be deaths every day for the next several weeks here in Utah at an elevated rate. Our hospitals will, at a certain point, be so full, they will start doing the triage healthcare thing. And so people are going to wait for important surgeries, and someone might die from that waiting. I mean, these are real life situations here that you should be able to step away from the talking points of your favorite cable news channel, quote unquote news, and think about this stuff. But the governor can't say that every time he speaks, right? He can't say, let's remember to be moral human beings. Let's remember that we're not the only person that exists. Let's remember there are others out there in different situations than us, and think, use your brains. He can't say that every time. So instead he gets up and tries to present, the truth. He just says, look, we don't have the testing staff. We don't have the testing capacity. There's no way we could test enough to be effective with a virus this contagious. So we can't really do anything. It's where we're at. Again, he's eating it for that, and a lot of people are just livid that the governor stood up and said these things, but I kind of sympathize because I think he talked to us like adults. The problem is there's a lot of doubt that we are anymore. Everyone's so reactionary, and everyone's so tribal, and everyone is so willing to just fight any information that challenges their preconceived worldview or preconceptions. It's called confirmation bias, and it's at a height right now. And so the governor standing up and saying something that is literally just a fact, we even if we had warehouses of tests and tens of thousands of trained volunteers willing to jump into pop-up testing sites throughout the state, even if we had that, which we don't, and which no state does. Well, some states, California and Oregon on the west here, for example, they ramp things up pretty well. And so they're actually still able to do a lot of testing and know where the outbreaks are happening. But most other states didn't and couldn't at this point effectively anyway. So the governor was just telling us where we're at. That's what we should want from our elected officials. And everybody's mad at him. Weird times. We'll be back right after this.
Wow, your cars look so shiny.
Thanks. I've been taking them to Green Gorilla Car Wash. Thanks to their new ceramic application, my cars have never had such a glossy shine.
Sounds expensive.
You haven't heard about their sale? Right now, their Jungle membership with ceramic coating is half off for every vehicle. Instead of $30 per month, I'm only paying $14.99 from now until September 2022.
That's almost a whole year.
I know. My half-price membership is good at both Green Gorilla locations in the Valley.
I better head there now.
It's the start of a new year, and your friends at Heritage Ram want to help you to look forward to 2022 with the Start Something New sales event. Get 1.9% for 60 months, plus $2,750 total bonus cash on 2021 Ram 1500 Classic Warlock Quad Cab 4x4s. Find out why Ram is the brand with the highest pickup loyalty in America, and experience the Heritage difference. The Start Something New sales event, all month long at Heritage, your hometown dealer with the biggest deals.
When the bills from your accident pile up, it's time for you to consider professional legal counsel. Get the Bear. Berenson and Caldwell.
My dad was in a car accident. He was rear-ended by a work truck. He sustained some pretty bad injuries. What we didn't know at the time was that he also had sustained a traumatic brain injury, and it really affected his personality. You know, if he had just had an MRI, if he'd had someone pushing him to get checked out, make him feel confident that he wasn't going to end up going bankrupt with medical debt.
Visit BerensonLaw.com to instantly connect and receive a free case review of your injury. BerensonLaw.com.
Coming up on the Friday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, Clay is back and Buck's in his final day of quarantine. They're going to be talking to you about what's going on with the COVID fight. We'll have Senator Rand Paul with us to discuss. Also, Art Laffer on the economy and all the laughably bad moves that Joe Biden's making on it. We'll discuss that and more coming up on a Friday edition of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
That is our time for today. Thank you for tuning in. Coming up next, Aggie Game Day with Al Lewis in just a few minutes here on KVNU Logan.